David Bowie, bonjour et merci d'être avec nous. Vous avez eu 50 ans le 8 janvier dernier. Il y a beaucoup de rockstars qui, à 50 ans, deviennent des jukebox et donnent des compilations et ont beaucoup de succès en faisant cela. Vous, c'est pas du tout cela puisque vous sortez un nouvel album qui est très différent, qui est très tonique. Pourquoi suivez-vous cette voie qui est très différente des autres?
Probably because it's a collection of everybody's style. I'm not sure that I have one particular style. I think I have no style loyalty at all. I think that I've always seen that what I do is being more of a synthesis of my own enthusiasms, the things that I like, whether it's the visual arts or music or theatre or films. The aspects that make our society interesting, the things, the way that we express our society, I get excited by those expressions, and they channel themselves through the work that I do. And I think the idea of style for me is something that I find adaptable, and I generally choose a style to suit the material that I'm working with. Probably that's why it sounds different to everybody. It's different and it's the same as.
Vous avez dit il n'y aura jamais de David Bowie définitif, et vous le prouvez, je serais tenté de dire chaque jour, chaque heure, voire chaque minute. Là, c'est un style musical très différent avec la musique jungle, avec un travail que vous avez fait aussi beaucoup sur Internet. Il y a une chanson comme Telling Lies que vous avez proposée sur Internet, et la version définitive a été un peu choisie par les gens qui sont sur Internet. Est-ce exact?
I'll just go back to the earlier part of your statement. I think the change is merely on the style. I think there is a very strong continuity in the thematic part of the work that I do. I think a lot of it has always dealt with, and still does to a certain degree, with one's feelings of distance from society, and also from maybe the re-evaluation of one's spiritual life. I think a latter 20th century concern is how we put our new God back together again. I think that we're coming into an era of chaos, and chaos is meaning in our lives, and I think that we have to readapt our interpretation of religion and spirituality to suit our new millennium that's coming. To go back to your other question, I think the internet's cool. I think it's, for someone like me who overwrites, I have far too much material. A lot of it is not very accessible. I think it's a great way of making it accessible to a public that might not be able to get it on record. Because the only trouble working with a corporate situation like a record company,
c'est la fin du disque.
as a form, as a conveyance of sound, possibly is, yes. I think the internet is the future of our listening pleasure in some shape or other. We'll have to download onto something, and for the time being, I think the next stage will be recordable CDs. I think we'll record the output of the computer onto a CD form. We'll be our own manufacturers, I think.
Quels sont les contacts que vous avez avec vos fans sur Internet? Est-ce que vous leur répondez vraiment?
Only anonymously. But I do respond. I often challenge them with rumors and apocryphal stories and suggestions of potential pasts, and see how they get along with that.
On a vu beaucoup de monde dans le film retraçant votre carrière avant cette interview. Quels sont les hommes et les femmes qui ont compté dans votre vie aujourd'hui?
I'm not sure that I have very tight relationships with my friends. Most of them are fairly anonymous to the public. They wouldn't, the public wouldn't recognize or know them. So obviously I shall keep their anonymity. I think, and in terms of cultural icons, there are so many people that I admire for the work that they do. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I suppose a starting point for me would be both William Burroughs and Marcel Duchamp. They're the first two gentlemen that deconstructed what I knew of society in a way that I found ironic, witty, and mesmerizing. And I saw that, and I read that, and I thought, I want to do that. But it's rock and roll, so it'll be a bit different.
Ça s'arrête là?
But it never stops, you know. I mean, I'm just a fan. I'm a fan.
Et au niveau de l'amitié, les gens qui ont compté?
Well, as I say, most of them are not known to the public, so it would mean nothing it wouldn't mean nothing to you. You wouldn't know them. Let's call them Bob, Ted, and Alice. There you are.
Ok, très bien. Est-ce que dans votre vie, vous recherchez l'équilibre ou le déséquilibre?
I don't think I have to look very far for chaos. I think that's an inevitable part of our existence. So I guess that I struggle to find an equilibrium within that chaos. And I'm quite traditional enough to suggest that it does come from having a terrific relationship with one other. But gee, I'm just an old-fashioned guy.
Est-ce que dans cette façon de vivre, il y a eu des moments où vous vous êtes perdu vous-même? Je parle d'aujourd'hui parce que vous avez l'air très très zen.
Who hasn't?
Et qui vous a sauvé?
First time around, I think it was my best friend, Coco. Second time, I think the saying is once bitten, twice shy. Second time, I think I was fast enough to realize that I had created my own problems, and I think I put myself on a more focused lifestyle. Yeah, definitely.
Et il n'y a pas eu de troisième fois?
Third time lucky.
We
all live for that third time, I'm sure.
Est-ce que vous vous sentez bien dans cette fin de siècle?
I'm positively euphoric.
Mais ça tient à quoi, ce changement?
I think, for me personally, the 21st century began in the 70s. I think we've just been very slow to get there. I think that a lot of the absolutes and a lot of the ways of thinking and the political systems and the art forms all started massive transition in the 60s. And I think it was a prelude to the 21st century. I believe that there'll be a far greater emphasis on community and social community life. And I, for one, look forward to it immensely. I'm terribly excited about the prospects of the next century, which, of course, doesn't begin for another 4 years. In 2001, we actually start the next millennium.
Comment avez-vous expliqué la vie et le monde à votre fils Zoe, ou Joe, qui a aujourd'hui, je crois, près de 25 ans, et donc vous êtes beaucoup occupé?
Well, as he's the philosopher, he explains it to me.
Ouais, et sur votre vie, comment avez-vous justifié toute votre vie? Est-ce que vous l'avez fait avec lui ou...
Well, I don't think he has quite the same avid interest in the biographies written on me as possibly journalists do, say, because he has the luxury of actually knowing me personally. I don't know. He's quite a worldly character. I don't think he has great problems on how people develop their lifestyles and the changes that they have in their own lives. Don't seem to be a great burden on his shoulders. He's a very carefree but academic, witty, serious, wonderful man. He is 25 now, and I think that he's dealing with life extremely well. Probably a lot better than I did when I was his age. He seems to be a lot more moderate. He seems very much part of the 90s. He's very much a 90s person.
Il était témoin à votre mariage avec Iman à sa demande. Ça vous a beaucoup touché?
I think it was actually a mutual feeling that we all wanted to be there on the same day. Well, of course. We've always lived together, so I'd asked him the week previously. We share our lives. I mean, I have a very strong relationship with him. It's an interesting question.
Ouais. Votre vie privée a longtemps été étalée dans les magazines, parce que vous le vouliez bien, je suppose. Aujourd'hui, vous avez l'air beaucoup plus réservé. Est-ce exact?
Actually, well, I think my life has always been a private life. A life has been documented, and I think it would make a wonderful movie. But I see that particular person as more of a doppelganger, and I can't wait to see what he does next.
Quels sont vos repères spirituels? Vous avez dit j'ai été bouddhiste pendant 15 jours. Bon, c'est très à la mode d'être bouddhiste actuellement. Vous, est-ce que par rapport aux religions, à la spiritualité, est-ce que vous êtes là aussi une sorte d'extraterrestre ou est-ce que vous suivez une voie?
Well, I think I have a very strong academic bent toward religion and philosophy generally. I mean, I'm a voracious reader. I think I found all the excitements of my life and all the experiences that I've had have begun in some way through reading a book, whether it were reading Jack Kerouac or whether it were reading...
Kerouac, c'est votre frère Thierry qui vous l'a fait découvrir.
I'm not sure that that's so. But I believe that Kerouac had probably the most lasting effect on me as a teenager because it gave me a terrific excitement about the freedom and the idealized vision of a bohemian America. And that sort of, that gave me I really wanted to embrace the American culture terrifically. Things like the blues and poetry, beat poetry, and life in New York or in San Francisco, all that kind of thing. So I was thrilled when I actually got the chance to get there and become for a year or two a surrogate American. I enjoyed that very much.
Et dans votre album, il y a une chanson qui s'appelle 7 ans au Tibet. C'est un hommage à un livre aussi d'un auteur allemand qui s'appelle Heinrich Harrer.
Well, again, it goes back to when I first sort of had a passing flirtation with Buddhism when I was about 18, something like that. And I stumbled into an organization called the Buddhist Society in London and started listening to lectures by a then High Court judge called Christmas Humphreys. He was the only Buddhist judge in Britain, I think. And at one time he was in fact the head of the Buddhist Society. And during one of these kind of communal lectures, I met a young Tibetan called Chimi Yongdung Rinpoche. And he became, for a while, I guess almost my guru, and taught me an awful lot about Buddhism, specifically Tibetan Buddhism, and really brought home to me how ill-treated they'd been by the Chinese and what was happening under the Chinese invasion at the time. And from that, I got interested in the culture and the social and philosophic side of Tibet, and I found this extraordinary book by Heinrich Harrer about the discovery of Tibet by a Westerner, probably the first time a Westerner had been into Tibet for many, even hundreds of years, and found this archaic social system. And it stayed with me for many, many years. And with the advent of the new popularity and the great job that the Dalai Lama is doing in vocalizing his country's plight, it made me once again sort of refer back to that period when I had the same kind of intense interest in the country. That's sort of where the song came out of, really.
David Bowie, on est très sérieux depuis le début de cette interview et pour le public, votre image qui est pas facile à suivre, vous avez dit vous-même que vous êtes un caméléon. Aujourd'hui, il y a un deuxième caméléon peut-être qui est Prince, je ne sais pas ce que vous en pensez.
I know that we share some similarities in as much that we both write much too much. And I think he has the same sartorial indulgences that I have. I think maybe his attention span is a lot more focused than mine. And he has a far tighter genre of music than I do.
Aujourd'hui, vous êtes plus sobre dans vos tenues vestimentaires. Pendant très longtemps, la couleur de... Non.
No.
Non, ah bon. Aujourd'hui, alors. Juste aujourd'hui.
Oh, today, this particular today, demain?
Demain.
Am I really? Oh, that's I'm actually a very buoyant, fairly carefree person. I think possibly, why am well, I hope I don't appear too serious. I'm not at all serious.
Ouais.
Lots of levity.
Pendant des années, vous avez changé de couleur de cheveux. Là, c'est plus stable aujourd'hui. Ça peut changer demain encore.
I've only ever been red. I tell you an interesting thing, though, is when I traveled on the, in the 70s, in the mid-70s, I used to go backwards and forwards from Europe to America on the ocean liners because I had a great fear of flying. And there was a gentleman, a very well-known musician in Britain, who was also traveling on the ship, and he had dinner with me every night of the week for the 5 or 6 nights of the trip. And then he wrote an article in a newspaper saying that he'd had the most extraordinary encounter with a creature who dyed their hair gold, green, blue, and yellow, I think he said. And I've never been anything other than my natural color, or red. But in his mind, it had become a multicolored experience. So I think the singularity of dyeing one's hair gives people license for a greater fantasy of a life than really exists. So as long as I've brought a little joy to people's lives by using peroxide, then what more could I possibly want in life?
Qu'est-ce que vous avez à dire aux adolescents qui ont vu aussi que dans votre vie, il y a eu beaucoup d'excès de faits, de drogue, de sexe, et aujourd'hui dans un monde très violent à cause du sida? Est-ce que vous avez à leur dire, ne faites pas comme moi?
Not many adolescents approach me with their sexual problems. I don't get asked questions like that. Not by young people, anyway. They're too busy getting the answers from television programs.
Quelle est votre meilleure expérience en cinéma? Le film Basquiat va sortir en France dans quelques semaines, en principe. Et vous jouez le rôle de Andy Warhol, ce qui devait être une grande satisfaction pour vous.
Well, I guess, interestingly, I don't actually enjoy the acting part of it very much. I like the social life, hanging out with other well-known actors, dreaming of what it must look like to be on a poster. I like working with really interesting directors, so I can just talk to them. The acting part is kind of something that just you have to do to sort of be in movies. But I much prefer just the fun of it, really. And I've been very lucky. The chances that I've had are offered to very few non-actors anyway. I mean, it was just a gas working with people like Chris Walken and Dennis Hopper and Gary Oldman on the Basquiat movie. Equally, I enjoyed very much watching somebody like Julian Schnabel really reach deeply into himself and pull out a very fine talent for filmmaking. It was extraordinary to watch it happen because he knew he was naive and a kind of a real newcomer to making films. But he just sort of blundered in. He didn't abide by any rules, and he shot his own way from the perspective, again, of an admirer of movies. And it was wonderful to watch him blossom as a filmmaker. That was terrific. On the other hand, it was a wonderful experience working with Scorsese on The Last Temptation of Christ. Somebody who understands the vocabulary and the language of film so well and so intimately. A master craftsman. Watch him at work was just tremendous as well. So I tend to, if I do films, I tend to, my first question is, who is the director? And if it's somebody that's really appealing, then I read the script. You know, I go for the director first, then I find out what the film's about. But the film is almost secondary. if it's somebody like Scorsese, you just don't say no. Say, yeah, I'd love to do that. Thank you very much.
Parmi ceux avec lesquels vous n'avez pas encore tourné, quels sont ceux à qui vous diriez oui tout de suite, les yeux fermés?
I guess Jim Jarmusch, I think, is wonderful. And of course, Luc Besson. I've met Luc. I like him very much. I would have loved to have worked with Fassbinder, I think. And maybe those are the three that come to mind. I like, yeah. That would be nice. But it's no big deal. I mean, it's like, it's not on my list of priorities.
La priorité, c'est...
I'd be happier enough if they just used my music in their movies. That would make me happy.
La peinture est aussi une de vos activités importantes. Vous avez exposé plusieurs fois déjà. Est-ce que vous avez envie de vous y consacrer de plus en plus?
No, I think I've got the balance right. In the 80s, I think I did more painting and sculpting, but then I did music, especially around the middle, around 84 to around 86, 84, 86. I got fairly indifferent to the music that I was making. I didn't like it. I thought it was very bad. And I had to step away from it. My way of stepping away was to put myself into another medium. And it's almost like you work out your problems through another medium. And I tended to do that. Now, I think the balance is cool. Music is back again as my priority, as it used to be. And the rest of what I do provide a substantial mattress for the way that I write music, and they make me happy. They just make me happy. It just makes me happy to do that other stuff. No big deal.
Vous vivez très fortement le présent. Je crois que ce qui s'est passé hier ne vous intéresse pas du tout, ou pas beaucoup. Et est-ce que vous êtes très projeté dans votre propre futur? Est-ce que vous savez ce que vous ferez dans 3 mois, dans 4 mois, dans 6 mois, ou est-ce que c'est mystère?
Yes, I think in the future only 11 3/4 months. It's a rule that I've made over the last 10 years of my life. Only 11 3/4 months. That's as far into the future as I ever look at any given time. And what I'm doing a very big birthday concert on January the 9th with some guests, some friends of mine, Madison Square Garden. Then in spring and summer of next year, I shall be working festivals again in Europe, which I thoroughly enjoyed this last year. I thought it was great. And then I stop a little further on than that, because past 11 3/4 months, I have no idea.
Pour l'album qui va sortir, vous n'avez pas un programme où vous allez nous surprendre en vous produisant dans des situations imprévues, pas dans des circuits habituels?
I think maybe for me, the most exciting aspect of what we might be doing this summer is that we've been asked to do some raves, which means that we have to provide dance music for very drugged crowds. That should be an experience.
C'est très difficile à organiser en France, hein. C'est très surveillé par la police, les rêves.
Wow. I'm sure there's a way around it.
Qu'est-ce que vous appréciez le plus quand vous venez à Paris?
My wife.
Ouais. Et à Londres, ma femme, et en Suisse, ma femme, et à Los Angeles aussi.
It's a bit like that, yeah.
Ouais.
I'm still
Elle est très proche de vous, elle arrive à vous suivre parce que c'est pas toujours facile.
It's reciprocative, you know. I mean, it tends to work out extremely well that if I'm working hard on a project, it's often pure coincidence and pure convenience that she wouldn't be working in that period. And so far, after the last 7 years, things have worked out very well that way. And if she's working, as often as not, I can be with her, because a lot of what I do is cerebral work. I mean, it's working, it's writing, it's thinking things through. The actual work of being in the studio is only one aspect of what I do. So much of it I can do wherever she is. So I can be in the hotel room and be struggling with a song while she's doing whatever it is she does when she's not in the hotel room.
Qu'est-ce qui est le plus important dans votre vie?
I always hate that question.
On passe à une autre.
It seems so unanswerable.
Non, OK.
But I'll try.
Ouais.
I think it has something to do with being able to reach the end of any one day and feel that you took from it and gave back to it as much as is possible. I hate these days to waste days. I think that's important. I think.
Vous savez ce que vous ferez demain?
But I could be wrong. Do you know, I haven't got a clue. I really don't know. Now you put me on the spot. I will be in the studio. I will be in the studio. I've got some mixes to finish, so I know that much.
Sur votre album, donc, vous êtes habillé avec le drapeau britannique et il y a un titre Battle for Britain.
I think it's probably got some historic pretension to it. The first time prior to the punk movement, in the first kind of pop art rock of the 60s, Pete Townsend wore a Union Jack jacket, exactly the same thing. And then in the punk movement in the 70s, the punks took the flag and started tearing it and putting pins through it. So my postmodernist revision of it is a Union Jack jacket with tears and pins in it. It's also a frock coat, which symbolizes an empire that no longer exists.
Vous êtes citoyen du monde ou citoyen anglais?
Oh, mais oui. Oh, dis donc.
Ou extraterrestre?
A citizen of the universe. Yes, sure. My people. My people. I'm terribly excited that they found water on the moon. And even more relieved they haven't found water on my brain. Let's keep it on the moon. I think an indication that there really is life. I mean, they found so much water recently that either the universe is pregnant or they found a new piece of technology which has enabled them to find water, because it's all happened in the last 2 or 3 years. Suddenly there's water everywhere. I mean, it must have been there for billions of years, right? But they've only just found it. And where there's water is life, so I think it does point fairly dramatically to an even stronger possibility that there are millions of little Steven Spielbergs out there somewhere, which is all very exciting for us writers.
Merci beaucoup.
My pleasure.